The Giants may be one bad decision away from repeating the same mistakes that ruined past seasons, because while New York quietly debates whether Odell Beckham Jr. still has anything left, another veteran just hit free agency that could completely change this defense overnight. And insiders believe both situations are far more complicated than fans realize. But once details from inside the Giants' talks started leaking, the entire OBJ reunion suddenly stopped looking guaranteed. The New York Giants may be heading toward one of the most important offseasons they've had in years, and somehow, two former stars are sitting right in front of them. One could completely stabilize the defense. The other could bring back one of the most emotional reunions in franchise history. But behind the scenes, neither move is as simple as fans think. Because while the Giants continue searching for answers in the secondary, veteran corner Kenny Moore suddenly became available after a shocking split with Indianapolis. And around the league, many believe he's exactly the kind of versatile defender this roster still desperately needs. At the exact same time, the New York Giants are quietly staying connected with Odell Beckham Jr., even as serious questions continue to surround his future health and role on the team. On paper, both moves make sense, but internally there's hesitation everywhere. Concerns about money, age, injuries, locker room fit, and whether these veterans can still truly change games at a high level. And once one insider revealed what's really holding the OBJ reunion back, Giants fans started realizing this story could end very differently than expected. Everybody keeps talking about the Giants' pass rush heading into this season, but quietly the biggest problem on this defense might actually be hiding in the slot. Because while Drew Phillips has flashed serious potential, the inconsistency is becoming impossible to ignore. One drive, he looks like a future star. The next, he's giving up big completions, drawing costly penalties, or getting lost in coverage against experienced receivers. That's what makes the possible addition of Kenny Moore so interesting. The Giants don't necessarily need him to replace Phillips. They may need him because they still don't fully trust the current setup. Modern NFL offenses attack the middle of the field relentlessly, and the best defenses in football usually have one thing in common: elite slot defenders who can cover, blitz, tackle, and disguise coverages without becoming liabilities. Right now, New York has talent in the secondary, but depth, discipline, and reliability are still major question marks. And if Denard Wilson wants to run the aggressive Ravens-style defense everyone expects, the Giants may need another veteran who can stabilize everything before those weaknesses get exposed early in the season. And once you look at how Denard Wilson actually wants this defense to operate, Kenny Moore starts looking less like an option and more like a necessity. What makes Kenny Moore such a fascinating fit for the New York Giants isn't just his experience. It's the kind of defense New York is trying to build under Denard Wilson. This isn't a system that relies on simple formations or predictable coverages. Wilson wants versatility everywhere. Safeties rotating late, corners disguising blitzes, defensive backs moving all over the field before the snap. And that's exactly where Kenny Moore could completely change things. Even at 30 years old, Moore still brings something the Giants currently lack: flexibility. He can line up in the slot, support the run, blitz off the edge, and even function like a hybrid safety in certain packages. That gives New York endless options, with players like Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin already expected to play major roles. Suddenly, offenses wouldn't know who's dropping into coverage, who's attacking the quarterback, or who's rotating deep after the snap. And that unpredictability is exactly what made Baltimore-style defenses so dangerous in the first place. The Giants already have talent, but Moore could be the piece that finally connects everything together and gives this defense a real identity again. But while Giants fans focused on fixing the defense, the Odell Beckham situation quietly became even more complicated behind the scenes. The relationship between the New York Giants and Odell Beckham Jr. has turned into one of the most complicated storylines in football right now. Because on the surface, it looks simple: a franchise legend potentially returning to where it all began. But behind the scenes, it's anything but simple. Reports suggest both sides are still in contact, still interested, and still open to the idea. But there's a growing gap between interest and commitment. The Giants are carefully evaluating whether Beckham can still produce at a meaningful level after injuries and reduced production in recent seasons. Meanwhile, OBJ isn't looking for just a camp invitation or a symbolic return. He wants a real opportunity to contribute and prove he still belongs on an NFL field. That's where the tension builds. The Giants don't want a roster experiment that becomes a distraction. And Beckham doesn't want a situation where he signs cheaply, struggles in camp, and risks damaging the final chapter of his career. So both sides are waiting, watching, hesitating. And the longer it drags out, the more it starts to feel like a reunion that everyone wants, but nobody knows how to actually complete. But one leaked insider detail revealed the real reason this reunion is stuck in limbo, and it changes everything. The biggest reason the Odell Beckham Jr. situation with the New York Giants has stalled isn't talent, it's control over how his career ends. Because from the outside, fans keep asking the same question: why not just sign a veteran minimum deal and try to prove it in camp? But league insiders suggest it's far more complicated than that. For OBJ, that kind of contract comes with massive risk. If he signs cheap and then gets cut during camp or preseason, it doesn't just mean losing a roster spot, it could signal to the entire league that his playing days are effectively over. That's the last label he wants attached to his name after everything he's accomplished. On the Giants' side, there's also hesitation. They respect what Beckham means to the franchise, but they don't want a situation where they bring him in, invest reps in him, and then have to make an uncomfortable cut in front of a home crowd. So instead of a clean agreement, both sides are stuck in a waiting game, where pride, legacy, and uncertainty are all pulling in different directions. And that's why this reunion isn't happening yet, even though both sides still haven't shut the door. But the real twist is what both the Giants and OBJ are secretly waiting for, and it's not what fans expect. The pressure is quietly building inside the New York Giants' wide receiver room, and it could completely change how they approach the Odell Beckham Jr. situation. Because right now, nothing is stable. Injuries, uncertainty, and lack of proven depth are all stacking up at the worst possible time. There are already concerns about the availability of Malik Neighbors heading into the season, with reports suggesting he may not be fully ready early on. Add in the ongoing injury issues with other receivers like Darius Slayton, and suddenly the Giants' offensive depth chart starts looking thinner than expected. That leaves a major question: who is actually going to take meaningful reps with the starting offense during training camp? Names like Darnell Mooney, Isaiah Hodgins, and other depth options can fill space, but they don't bring the same impact or chemistry potential as a proven veteran. That's where OBJ becomes more than just a storyline, he becomes a football conversation again. Even in his current form, there's a real argument he could still match or outperform some of the current depth options, especially as a downfield and scramble play threat. And that's why this isn't just nostalgia anymore. It's a roster problem the Giants may have to solve sooner rather than later. But the real question is whether the Giants are ready to trust the present or take a gamble on the past. The Giants are standing at a crossroads that could quietly define their entire season. On one side, there's stability and structure. On the other, there's star power, risk, and emotion. And the decisions they make around these two situations could shape everything that follows. Adding Kenny Moore II would be about fixing a real football problem. The New York Giants secondary still has questions, especially in the slot, where consistency and communication matter just as much as talent. Moore brings experience, versatility, and a proven ability to handle complex defensive responsibilities. In a system that demands movement, disguise, and flexibility, he could be the piece that ties everything together and raises the floor of the entire defense. Then Odell Beckham Jr., a completely different type of decision. This isn't just about production, it's about identity, legacy, and timing. The Giants like the idea of the reunion, and OBJ clearly still has interest in proving he can contribute. But both sides are stuck between wanting a clean opportunity and fearing how quickly it could go wrong. One move is about building a more complete defense. The other is about rewriting a story that never fully ended. And the reality is, the Giants might not get both answers they want, only the one they're willing to risk the most. Because in the end, this offseason might not be remembered for who they signed, but for the decisions they were too afraid to make.